I think one of the big decisions of the RNC post assassination attempt, post all the fanfare, Donald Trump felt like he was at an all-time high. He'd raised his fist. I work at a bar in Kansas City, Missouri. Everybody was talking about it. He had a huge political moment handed to him, right? The lunatic kid that got away with it, like it actually was a gift basket to Donald Trump for about a week. And I think he got a little drunk on his own supply because he picked J.D. Vance, who is going to be remarkably unpopular. I think he felt untouchable. I think he felt like he was going to bury Joe Biden because every single swing state poll showed him with a massive lead. I mean, dude was up 10 points in Arizona in aggregate RCP polling. I mean, it was a disaster. So I can understand his calculation, right? But do you think that the J.D. Vance selection is going to bite him in the ass? And what do you make of a guy like J.D. Vance as somebody from Virginia? You've got your own ties to coal country and progressive history, and this guy seems like he's just a big LARPer that wants to pretend that people from Kentucky are dumb.
Yeah, I mean, it's very convenient that his entire ideological and political shift going from, Trump may be America's Hitler to Trump is the best president that's ever existed, the best man who's ever existed in the history of the world, happened to align very closely with his own political self-interest. So I think that tells you everything you know about this person. And I think in terms of the pick, I was very surprised by it because last time around with Mike Pence, Trump made a very savvy strategic choice. He needed to shore up support with evangelicals, and Mike Pence did that for him, provided him trust with that community, which now has become to be his bedrock, most unshakable group of supporters. But at the time, the landscape was very different. So especially because of how high the stakes are for Trump, not just in terms of the political stakes, but his own personal legal stakes, I thought he would make a similarly savvy, strategic choice. And I do not see how in any world J.D. Vance is a savvy, strategic choice. He is on a political level, he is a repellent and unlikable, just on the vibes, put aside the policy, just on the vibes. He underperformed in Ohio. Tim Ryan is no great shakes himself, and yet he was able to keep that race within shooting distance. I think he lost by 6 points, which in Ohio at this point, J.D. Vance dramatically underperformed, especially in the area, the Appalachian part of Ohio, where he's supposedly supposed to be, the sort of soothsayer for this group of individuals. And then the biggest problem for him, though, is obvious. It's all the insane shit he said on abortion. And when Democrats have been successful, and the reason they were successful in 2022 is because Republicans nominated this band of freaks and weirdos who said all sorts of crazy, insane things about January 6th and about abortion, about all kinds of other things. And it just had an utterly repellent effect on any sort of normal swing voter. J.D. Vance has also, he's way too online in these weird right-wing, niche subcultures.
The Tower Boy thing is crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
He follows a weird Twitter account that glorifies it. This is what they took from you. Back in the medieval times, you could have fucked a towel boy. I'm like, bro, if it's consensual in 2024, you can fuck all the towel boys you want. Live your life. But that's a weird subreddit.
That's a weird one to be following on Twitter. But it's just an indicative of how he's sort of immersed himself in this bizarre right-wing online subculture that if you're romping to a massive electoral college landslide where Virginia's in play, I guess you can afford to have the luxury of this guy that your weirdo Don Jr.'s son really likes. But in a world where you're up against a Democrat who can at least formulate occasionally a coherent thought, then he becomes much more of a liability. And another thing is, with Kamala Harris, the issue where she has probably been the most effective spokesperson is on abortion. So she is going to put that front and center. She is a much more credible messenger on it than Joe Biden, who was uncomfortable with the issue and his Catholicism, and he's always a moderate on it, and he just was uncomfortable talking about it. She's much more credible. She's much more effective of a messenger on the issue, and it is very potent for Democrats if we judge by the consistent electoral results that we've seen. And I just think he gives the overall ticket a whiff of fringe freak weirdo at a time when Trump is desperately trying to create a more moderate.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and create sort of a more moderate persona. We went to the mat to make sure that they took some like anti-gay stuff and anti-choice stuff out of the RNC platform. Like anyone cares what the actual official Republican Party platform is, but he knows it's a problem, and so it was a little self-indulgent for him to pick JD Vance, who is a clear liability on these issues.
Yeah, totally. I'm also super interested, Krystal, in your opinion of JD Vance from the perspective of right-wing populism, right? Because a lot of people have been talking about this in the context of quote unquote right-wing populism, saying that JD Vance's selection is a win for populists over a more neocon pick or a more expected old school Republican like Doug Burgum or Marco Rubio, who obviously were the other front runners for Trump's VP. Now, I'm obviously specifically interested in your opinion on this because you and Sagar have traditionally both identified as populists. I remember back in the day, you guys kind of labeled Rising and then Breaking Points as like a, right wing and left wing populism coming together. I feel like we don't hear as much about that anymore. I'm interested in, why that might be from your perspective. If you think the moment for left wing populism or populism in general is kind of fading, and also, in my opinion, so many Republicans specifically at this point have kind of mastered the art of just appropriating left-wing and populist talking points and policies, campaigning on them, even though they have no intention on actually governing that way, specifically when it comes to economic stuff like trade deals and also foreign policy stuff, anti-war rhetoric when they don't actually govern that way. I feel like this incredible, resurgence, or not resurgence, but this trend of Republicans basically pretending to be more populist or more left-wing than they actually are. I think it kind of neutralizes JD Vance's populist appeal because now he just sounds like a politician promising things that people know he's not going to actually deliver on. And he doesn't really deliver
That's an interesting take.
a way. He doesn't really deliver it in a way that's all that inspiring to me or that I really think is going to stick with people. So I do just think it comes off like, oh yeah, that's a fucking politician who's telling me what I want to hear, but I don't believe it.
So let me be fair to him. What's held up, there are a few things that he did on, I think he was partnered on lowering the cost of insulin. I believe he said some positive things about Lena Khan. He's been more open to at least private sector unions, although he's, again, like, the bar is kind of on the floor here. Like, he's against the PRO Act, for example. So how can you really be populist or pro worker if you're against, the flagship labor reform bill that has an active,
kind of like
ongoing
Josh Hawley
chance
being
of passing?
pro-worker and pro-right to work. It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Performatively showing up at a picket line is not the same as actually, bucking the Chamber of Commerce and backing the PRO Act alongside a Democratic president. And so obviously, overwhelmingly, especially when you're talking about elected Republicans, all of the populist rhetoric is just that. It's bullshit and it's rhetoric. And Trump didn't pick JD Vance because he cares about a populist shift in the Republican Party. I believe Trump picked JD Vance primarily because he watched him humiliate and embarrass himself and bend the knee in such a slavish way that he knows this guy will do and follow him wherever he goes now. And JD also went out of his way to say that, if he was Mike Pence, he thought that Mike Pence should not have certified the electoral college vote. So once again, like, when it comes down to, okay, if I ask this person to do something that goes totally against any sort of common sense or morality or judgment, will they follow me that far? And JD was like, yes, I will. So to me, that's the real reason why he ended up on the ticket, is he passed that test. Whereas, a Doug Burgum, does he find a shred of like self-respect and dignity in the end if he's asked to do something that he's horrified by? He may, especially he's a billionaire himself.
Money in North Dakota.
Right. He doesn't need this political game, but he feels like JD demonstrated his fealty so effectively that he thinks even the most odious tasks he won't think twice about doing.